Hey everybody, before we get started, I just want to remind you this episode is brought to you by our patrons, like Ahago Comics, Qua, and Nestor Flores. If you like what we do and want to see us do more, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to episodes early and lots of other goodies, and it would really help us out. Thanks for your support, everybody. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It is time once again to talk about Star Wars X-Wing 2nd Edition by Fantasy Flight Games. Yes, I said I'd do it, I'm finally doing it. I know this was like Monday's news, and I'm recording this on, I don't know, it's like Thursday or something? I don't know, days. What's time? I think that's the title of an episode, one of our podcast episodes. Bleh, bleh. Also, I can't speak. Derp. Hold on, I'm going to take a sip of water. And we're going to move on. Alright, so we're going to talk about Guardians of the Republic today, which is the pseudo starter kit for Republic. You still need a core set because you need your templates and shit, but it's got stuff in it. And we're going to talk about them. The ships, the pilots. I know there was a second article for upgrades for the Separatist box, but I wasn't really enthused enough to talk about that. They got synergy, I got energy torpedoes. Hey, guess what? The Solus 1 Belab title does actually make Grievous better. Who knew? Because people were judging Grievous a little harshly, I think. But yeah, so, I don't know. Well, if they do like a upgrade-focused article on this, I don't know if I'll cover it or not. We've been pretty busy. Kind of depends on the production schedule. If you like Legion stuff, hey, guess what? I released 2 videos on one day because they both ended up in the production backlog at the same time about both the Jyn Commander preview and the announcement for new operatives. So check that out. And we'll just move into it and go on. So first, because that's how this article is set up and also how my assets are set up, let's talk about the Delta-7 Aethersprite fighter. So, under normal circumstances, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, the Delta-7 has a 2-attack primary forward. It's got 3 agility, 3 hull, 1 shields. That's right? Yeah, no, okay. I'm like, I wrote these assets like days ago, so I'm like, did I get everything down correctly? Yeah, okay. You've got the focus, the purple evade, the target lock, the barrel roll, and the boost, and you don't have any linked actions. You do have a ship ability, but I figure we'll talk about that when we get to the generic. But it involves a lot of force point spendage. I'm assuming that all of these are also force point pilots, which means while they've been coming down a little bit on the price of some of those force stuff, they're still going to be pretty expensive, I think. So before we even talk about the dial, let's talk about that purple evade. I've seen a little bit on the forums and stuff that some people are a little agita about this. I think it's mostly just because the article pitches it as a positive. You can spend a force token to get an evade, and they're like, but that's bad, right? I mean, yes, it's a cost. I think people are looking too hard to make this an outright positive. Like, some people were like, ooh, I bet it'll give you no, it's like red actions, only it's purple. Instead of giving you a stress, you have to spend a force token to do it. And honestly, I don't know how much that's going to impact. Like, if you really want to do an evade, it's there. You might keep it. They've previewed before, so we're not going to talk about it, but they've previewed before that there's going to be a new force talent in this brilliant evasion, which is actually, depending on what you're doing, better for you than actually getting an evade token. Maybe, we'll see. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like people are too harsh on the purple. It's just whatever. Think of it as a red. Think of it as like it's an action with a cost, because it literally is. And the article, of course, spins it as a positive because it can't do anything else. It's a fucking preview article. Let's talk about the dial. So, I haven't really studied these too closely since I made the slides. The dial's okay. Once again, you're looking at a ship that's not great at slow rolling. We've talked about that a lot. It's very interesting that that's how a lot of these prequel era ships are working. But you've got 1 banks, which are blue, and you've got 1 turns, which are white. And then in your 2s, you've got a pretty diverse moveset. You've got straight and banks, which are both blue. You've got 2 turns, which are white. And then you've got 2 sloops, which are red, both directions. And on 3s, you've got the banks, which become white, and a forward, which is blue still. You've got a 4 forward, which is white, and a 4K turn, and you got a 5 forward, which is white, and a 5K turn, which is, both of those are obviously red. So, pretty flexible dial. Doesn't like to go super fast as much as like an A-Wing or a Interceptor, because it doesn't have like those blues all the way, but it can actually get up and go if it needs to. And it's got a very diverse set of flip-around options with, the T-rolls and 2 different K-turns if you need them. Not the T-rolls, the sloops. Derp. But yeah, it's got Segnar's loops and it's got K-turns, so it has a bit of flexibility in turning around. And honestly, not a lot of red on the dial, so it's pretty open. Now, losing stress is going to make you pretty predictable. You've only got a handful of moves there, so it's kind of a mixed bag, right? It doesn't got an excessive amount of blue, but it didn't have an excessive amount of red either. It's mostly just the turnarounds which are red, so which is pretty normal. So it's got decently flexible. With 3 hull and 1 shields and the 3 agility, this is definitely a light type fighter, a kind of interceptory ship. Like you see with A-Wings of various stripes, like you see with the TIE Interceptor types. It's fast, it's flexible, because it's got, like, reposition moves. I've heard a lot of people anecdotally saying when people like complain about the purple evade, and other people were like, A-Wings have evades, even though they're white. So yeah, I'll like, especially once we get to the ship ability, rather, when we talk about the generic in a second, because otherwise there's not a lot much else to talk about. You'll see that this is a very flexible ship. The 2 attack is okay. 2 attack is better in 2nd edition than it was in 1st, so it's very robust, and it's got a couple different options to fix that. Besides, of course, obviously the fact that, because it's got a purple evade here, as far as we know anyway, that all of the pilots are force sensitive, which gives you at least a little bit of mods. So, yeah, let's just go ahead and move into the pilots, since there's not much else to talk about the underlying ship frame. So first up, we have the Jedi Knight. So the important thing to note about the Jedi Knight is that they are an I3 generic pilot who has a force. And as I mentioned earlier, you're probably going to have force in all of this. So they have a 1 force pip, which regenerates, obviously. They're I3, so they're a generic that starts in the middle of the board, high level. And we see the ship ability is fine-tuned controls after you fully execute a maneuver. So you can't do overlaps and bumps and stuff. You may spend 1 force token to perform a booster barrel roll action. So you can't do this after reds because you can't do actions while you're stressed. But still, yeah. So Delta-7s can spend a force point to double reposition, which is a very unique-ish kind of effect. I mean, on the generic, you really probably want to save your 1 force point for either a talent use that you've attached, because I'm sure that at I3, these guys are definitely going to have force talents. They might still be expensive, but they're probably going to have them, considering their initiative level is so high. And there's not much else to set them apart from the not generics, the uniques, that way, otherwise. Or you want to save it for mods, just situational mods, because you can do those without even doing an action, You reposition once, or you target lock or focus or something. And maybe if you want to, like, TLN booster barrel roll, you can do it, because that'll work out better than, like, holding out. But you are in the middle of the road in terms of initiative, so I'd probably play more conservatively with these guys, just because there's, 3 whole initiative numbers who go before them, or go after them in terms of maneuvering. So, yeah, you might want to play it cautious. Don't know. Other than that, I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about these guys. I don't think generic Jedi Knights are going to see a lot of play, per se. Just because we know that Force pilots do tend to be expensive, and they do only get 1 Force pip with no, like, unique ability. Actually, I should have double-checked. Does anybody actually play Inquisitors? Not the characters Inquisitors, but the generic Inquisitor that the Imperials get. Probably not. But anyway. Let's go ahead and start moving through the named pilots, since this is going to take us a while. So, first up, we've got Sacy Tin, or Teen. Dunno, I think I'm pronouncing it right. The Prophetic Pilot, an I4, unique. They go up to 2 force points, so if you're accounting for that. And they have the ability, after a friendly ship at range 0 to 2 reveals its dial, you may spend 1 force point. If you do so, set its dial to another maneuver of the same speed and difficulty. So, honestly, for a 4, that's pretty handy. And it even works for higher initiatives. It obviously 0 means yourself, so it can be you. And technically doesn't say once per round, so you can do this a couple times, though I don't know if you'd want to burn all your force points doing that. But just for an example, on himself, I think Sacy is a dude. They're the horned type. Because they're the prophetic. I can't remember their species right now, but they're the ones with foresight. They're really cool in Force of Destiny. Anyway, so on the Delta-7, for instance, if you reveal a 2 maneuver, for turns, that's not great, because then you can only flip to the other turn. But if you reveal a bank or a straight, that means you have access to all of your banks and straights if you want to spend a force point. The same difficulty thing is also a little troubling, because like I said, with turns you can only flip one way or the other. On the other hand, that means you can reveal a sloop and decide, oh, golly gee willikers, I really want to sloop the other way. 4's not super high in the initiative order, but it's decent. It's better than a lot of generics, so you'll have a decent amount of look at the board. And if somebody is trying to block you, since blockers are usually low initiative, so they go first and gum up your way, you might be able to scroll your way out of some situations with an appropriately timed, like, flip of direction and then a barrel roll out of the way or something, right? So, it's not the worst ability. And works up to range 2 on your buddies, so it can support other higher initiatives because, at least as far as we know, I think from this article, there's like 3 I-5s. The original Polish leaks had Mace at 4, but I mean, I'm looking at this image that's in English that's of him as a 5, so I'm assuming that's correct. I'm going to roll with it until somebody tells me otherwise. So that, that can help you out if you're flying in formation. That's probably going to be a little pricey running a couple of these guys. When we get to talk about like the Torrent, I can say more about how I feel like the Republic is kind of an ace faction, but they're not like, I don't know if, depending on the cost, if they're going to be like a triple ace faction where you run like 3 sweet Jedi pilots together, or if it's like 1 ace and then a bunch of unique supports or generics in like a half swarm or something. I don't know. We'll see. Other than that, there's not much to talk about Sacy. Their ability is pretty good because you always want to be able to act with more information. The cost isn't terrible. You drop a force point. You can either, if you don't need to use it, you can let it regen and have 2, or you can spend 1 and still have it left over if you need mods for something. And yeah, it's not... Excuse me, I yawned. It's not terrible. So let's keep rolling. Got a lot of work to do. So, Mace Windu. Our next pilot. Way organized these alphabetically, that's why they're in this order. I-5, as far as we know. The Harsh Traditionalist. So Mace goes up to 3 pips of force, as you would expect from a Jedi Master. It's pretty solid. This, I think, is going to be actually the defining aspect of... Well, one of the really defining aspects of the Republic is the fact that they have several 3 force guys. Because we know Anakin's coming, and I believe he's shown to be 3 force on the spread. And then here's Mace with 3, and then, spoilers, Obi-Wan has 3. So, yeah, you're gonna get this action a lot. But his ability reads, after you execute a red maneuver, recover 1 force. So, I think the only downside to this ability is the fact that the Delta-7 does only have a very limited number of red moves. You've got 4, you've got your 2 sloops, which are at 2, and then you got a 4K and a 5K. So, to activate his ability, you got to be flipping around. However, that does give you freedom to spend your force points a little bit more rigorously because you can get them back easier. Obviously, you get back 1 every turn, but then, hey, you also can get another one back if you just do a red. So if you time this right and you time your expenditures right, not only does Mace Windu have 3 force points that you can work with, he can get those back a lot faster. So you can spend 2 force points on like an attack pass, and then you do your flip around move, all right? Like you dial up like a 5K to get some distance, and then flip around and come back in for another pass, and you've got all your force points back right away, which is good if you're going to be like on the defensive or something. So I think it's a good ability. He's in a good slot at I-5. It's he's not quite a 6, but with his ability to do some double repositions and stuff and get his force points back, he's a very flexible 5, so I think he'll be a very good pilot for this. And that's honestly why I kind of assume he's going to be 5. So, yeah, that's going to be a very interesting pilot, and I think he's gonna do well. And you're probably going to see a lot of Mace lists, at least for people who are trying out Republic. Also because he's Mother Criffin Mace Windu. There's not really much else to say about that. Like, besides being the at least on our list, the first upgrade to I-5 from 4 we've got, and the whole, 3 force points and the extra improvement. There's not much else to say. He's very simple. So now we're moving on to Obi-Wan Kenobi, also an I-5. Also 3 force points, as we spoiled earlier. And his ability reads, after a friendly ship at range 0 to 2 spends a focus token, you may spend 1 force point. If you do, that ship gains 1 focus token. So this is similar to the way Sacy is phrased. So Obi-Wan's ability works on himself. So if you focus and you need to spend it on something, you can spend a force point to get your focus token back, which is technically a better trade than keeping your force token to spend, because focus is every focus result, and force is just 1 focus result. I think that's right, because that's how Brilliant Evasion works. Hold on, now I gotta go into my image archives, because there's not an asset for Brilliant Evasion because it was spoiled earlier. It's like the energy torpedoes, but it's in here somewhere. Yeah, you may spend 1 force point to change 2 focus tokens, so yeah, it's 1 then. But still, so technically a focus token is better than the force token in that respect, and once again, Obi-Wan has force tokens to spare. He doesn't get them back as soon as Mace, so you want to be careful about blowing your entire load on force tokens. But, if you have to defend, because he's I-5, so technically, an opponent with an I-6, or an opponent who has the overall initiative over you, they might get the chance to shoot first. You pop a focus defensively. You're like, all right, force pip, I'm going to get my focus back. And now I can use it on offense. That ability also works with any friendly pilots flying in a decent formation. I'll have to double check if it's common, but I feel like range 0 to 2 seems like it's going to be a focus for a lot of these Republic abilities, since we've seen it twice. So yeah, loose formation flying also helps. I don't think we know enough about all the potential pilots. Well, we might, I don't know. But doing this in inertial impressions list format, I don't necessarily know if we're going to click on all the different pilots who might be flying within range 2 of Obi-Wan, who might be using focuses. I don't know yet. If you got any ideas about any synergy on that, hey, you can go ahead and comment on that. But yeah, it's I think it's a good ability, assuming he's not super expensive. I-5 with force, 3 force, probably a decent price, but not overpriced, let's hope. I think that'll sort out well. Ugh, sorry, yawned again. Yeah, I had to go outside to get some mail, so I, experienced the unending power of the sun, and now I'm sleepy and a little dehydrated. Sorry to all of those of you living in cold climates, where I'm sure it's very bracing to walk outside. But here in Studio Mega headquarters in Florida, it's fucking hot once again. Anyway, where was I? Obi-Wan. Yeah, there's not much else to say about it. I think he's got a good, well-rounded ability. Like I said, the effective regeneration of focus is very handy for a pilot like Obi-Wan, and probably a couple of his friends, if you're taking focus actions. So it will be very useful. We just have to figure out, who the best friends are to fly with him, or if you don't bother with that and just use it on himself. And then so for our last pilot, because of alphabeticalism, Plo-Koon, the Serene Mentor. Also an I-5. So, Plu's ability reads, at the start of the engagement phase, you may spend 1 force token and choose another friendly ship at range 0 to 2. If you do so, you may transfer 1 green token to it or 1 orange token from it to yourself. So, let me go ahead and double check all the lists of what those tokens are, but I will also mention Plo goes back down to 2 force points, so this is a little bit more of a economic spend. Also, I will say that while it does account for range 0 to 2, so that kind of keeps with the Republic theme, obviously you have to choose another friendly ship. So the 0 part only works if they accidentally bump you. That said, depending on your actions, that can be a thing. So hold on, let me go ahead and jump to the 2nd edition wiki and double check my tokens. Because there are a few kinds. So green tokens are calculate, evade, focus, reinforce. So mostly that's for this guy that's going to be focus or evade. So that might actually be a reason to take the evade action. It's just, God, that really sucks. And then orange tokens are, disarm, jam, and tractor. So, basically that means that if you have a buddy, and they've been disarmed, or they've been tractored or jammed or something, and you're like, no, let's get rid of that. you can slurp that off them onto you. Range 0 to 2, decent spread. More importantly, though, I expect what you're probably going to feel like is you're going to want to be able to pass green tokens. So, let's say with your superior positioning, he's an I-5, Plo is able to land a maneuver perfectly, and he's completely out of somebody else's shot. But let's say you're hanging out with somebody like Obi-Wan, or Mace Windu, and they're in the crosshairs. You can, take a focus action, and then at the start of the engagement phase, so after everybody's moved, you have the opportunity to go, okay, so here's how things turned out. I want to move my tokens around a little bit. It's not terrible. I do think that this does not work with Obi-Wan's ability because it's transfer a green token, not spend a green token. So the token is not spent, it's moved. But, Plo's initiative doesn't even matter for this part, other than it's just that it matters what actions he's using, so he can figure out if he needs to take a reposition action or if he wants to take a focus or evade or something. In general, I think because he's 2, you're probably not going to use his ability as much. Like, I would not want to spend a force point to get an evade and then spend another force point right after to, pass that evade off somewhere else and be out of force points. But I guess if Plo ends up in a situation where he's not getting shot at and he doesn't have a good shot, maybe. I don't know. But it does give you a decent amount of, tactical control. 2's not a terrible range band area, 0 to 2, to go, okay, we're at the start of the engagement phase. Shooting is about to start. I can look at this picture and go, all right, this guy's got a token I don't want on him. I'm going to put it on Plo so he's clear. Or, this guy really needs a focus for something. Or he didn't get his, he had to target lock or barrel roll or something, and I've got to focus on Plo I'm not going to use. I can scooch that somewhere else. It's an interesting ability, and like I said, it keeps a lot of precedent. I don't know how much you're going to be using it altogether, but since I did say that I expect that you're going to run some Republic lists, which are one big beefy Jedi pilot and then a couple of disposable clones, either red shirts or mauve shirts, it can work. So that's all our pilots for the Delta-7. They spoiled one upgrade for it, which we'll talk about. We can also mention. We do know about the other configs, so the first up we got here is the calibrated laser targeting, which is both a config and a modification slot. So hey, Delta-7s have a mod slot. But what this does is, while you perform an attack, if the defender is in your bullseye, add 1 focus result. And obviously, since all these guys have force tokens, that benefits very well. Or maybe if you're just taking focus. So it's basically, if you can get a bullseye, it's an extra die, basically, because it adds a die that shows that result. And if you have a focus token, free hit. Given how squirrely these things are, they can double reposition. And some of them will have force points left over to flip that focus. That's pretty good. This is a very solid investment. And the reason why I believe this is a config and a modification, other than the fact that it's pretty good, is that from the spread on the standalone Delta-7 pack, we do know that there is another config they have, the Delta-7B, that is +1 primary, -1 agility, and I believe it's +2 shields? And I think that's all it does, which basically converts you from a light, squirrely pseudo-A-Wing type fighter to a heavier X-Wing type fighter, which is also still squirrely. Because you still have double repositions and stuff like that. Depending on how much that costs, I expect some people will go with that option and just either use their repositioning ability or some other defensive abilities they can to, get the most out of the drop in defense dice and maximize their attack dice. Other people may go for calibrated laser targeting, especially if it's cheaper, which I could see because it's got an opportunity cost of taking 2 slots. I could see it being cheaper, which, relies on much more precise play. Either way, they're both very good options. Let's go ahead and move on to the Torrent. All right, I hope everybody's staying as hydrated as I am as we work through this. I knew this is going to be a long video, but still. Woo! All right, the V-19 Torrent. This lovely fighter has 2 attack, 2 agility, and 5 hull. So, right away, hoo boy, those stats. So, these things first of all, they better be, but probably are, in fact, going to be incredibly cheap, which actually fits the fluff. These were a stopgap fighter design until real specialized fighter shows up. but the Torrent is definitely a cheap filler ship type deal, and instead of going for like a 3 agility but very low hull amount, like a TIE fighter, they go 2 agility but have a little bit more hull. They have focus, evade, target lock, and barrel roll, which can turn into a red evade, obviously, because it's linked. So they're still fairly flexible. They got a decent action spread. They have a reposition. They can turn that into a reposition with an evade. Focus, target lock. Based on the fact that a lot of the card art shows these things shooting missiles, and the fact that there are missiles in this box, pretty sure these things can take missiles. We'll see if they can take 2 for barrage rockets or just 1. But that will probably be, like, the way they get extra kick in their attack, since they only have 2, is to do missiles. And they will probably be cheap enough to carry some ordnance, like we said. So the dial. Interesting. So these things can, in fact, slow roll. And yeah, they're once again, for a light ship, their dial is very interesting. So they've got 1 banks and 1 straight, which are blue. Then they have 1 turns, but those are red. So they can be pretty flexible up short, but it's going to cost them if they want to make tight turns. For 2, they have a 2 straight, which is blue. Then they have 2 banks and turns, which are white. And then they have 2 T-rolls, which are red, obviously. So, yeah, you got a lot of flexibility there. And then they have for 3s, they have a 3 straight, which is blue. They have 3 banks, which are red, and a 3K turn, which is red. And then they have a 4 straight. So, these things are okay. They've got a decent straight line speed. And for most of it, they don't mind going that fast. They actually remove stress. They do not like to turn. Only the banks are, the 1 banks are blue in terms of actually changing direction. They don't have 3 turns at all, and their 1 turns are red. So these things are very straight as an arrow fighters. They do not like to turn. You've got 2 turns which are white, so you got a little bit of flexibility there, but other than that, you're going to be making big straight passes with these things. Or you're going to take some stress to do some squirrely stuff like a 2T roll. So if you push the space frame, you can tuck in. But yeah, once again, it's a very interesting design. I don't know if I'd want to call these things sluggish. Like I said, they go up to 4 straight, and most of those straights are blue. And they do have a spread of turnaround moves. They just really don't like to get off that straight and narrow. You may, in fact, find yourself barrel rolling as a way to reposition so you can do straight moves, which I don't think you'd mind necessarily. But yeah. That's their underlying stats. Let's talk about some of these generic pilots. So, first pilot, Gold Squadron Trooper. You'll find this very interesting that these guys share squadron colors with some rebels. I think they're intentionally drawing some synergy there. Whether that was George Lucas making these guys those squadrons in the writing, or other writers in the Clone Wars TV series, or FFG choosing these guys. But this is an I-2 generic. There's a lot of missiles, a lot of freaking missiles in this, so that's where we're like, yeah, they have missile slots. I don't think there's much else to say, so I'll keep it short. You started an I-2. That's a pretty decent range for the type of faction that I think the Republic is going to be, and for a generic. Given the performance capabilities of these fighters, they it says they're supposed to be light escorts. Yeah, they're probably not expensive. And if you want to just throw some generics as like blockers or cannon fodder, maybe give them some light missiles to give them a little bit extra punch, and fly them with your favorite big bad Jedi, your favorite bomb bad Jedi, you can probably do that at 2. And having talked about the capabilities of the ship, there's not much else to talk about here, so I won't waste your time. Let's move on to the next slide and the pilot. Which is to say that there's not much else to talk about, because the next up is the generic Blue Squadron Protector at I-3. And possibly with a pilot talent, I don't know. I mean, it's a higher generic. Otherwise, it's nice middle of the board. Depending on the core costs, these guys might actually be useful to upgrade to for the extra initiative, just so you can get them moving in sync with some of your other pilots. Like, for instance, if you wanted to try a generic Jedi Knight and have everybody move at the same field, you could do that. I know there's some people who play these games and they prefer to run generics just because that's how they feel better. Others prefer, named pilot experiences. Other than that, it's the usual initiative upgrade. Will you take it? Maybe. You might actually. I don't know. That really depends on what the theme and strategy of your list is. Once again, not going to linger too much on this pilot, and we'll just jump into the next one. So for the next pilot, we're actually going down the initiative run to Tucker, which is why I made that joke. Red versus Blue is still relevant, at least the old seasons. So Tucker is a unique I-2. They are Blue 5. That's not going to be confusing at all. And they read, or he reads, since these are all clones, so it's all him. He reads, after a friendly ship at range 1 to 2 performs an attack against an enemy ship in your firing arc, you may perform a focus action. So, honestly, especially if he's not too expensive, Tucker's not terrible. As like I said, you can fly a big bad Jedi pilot, probably with some red shirt or mauve shirt. You know, a mauve shirt basically being a red shirt who has a name and a slight amount of characterization, but still might be disposable as far as the writing is concerned. So you could run this guy. And honestly, his I-2 doesn't hurt him. If you're in a position to fire at all, which, you know, you might be, run these guys with some Gold Squadron troopers as some blockers. You can probably catch some guys off guard. And then, whenever your friendly ships, either your guys who are at the same initiative so you can decide who shoots first, or higher initiatives can shoot, he can get a focus action. You can even use the barrel roll to position him in such a way so that you know that enemy ships are going to, like, they're going to cross the T on him. And obviously, so it's range 1 to 2 because reasons. But you're seeing, once again, the Republic-style synergy. Range 1 to 2. Focus actions are important. I expect the Republic's going to get a lot of focus-based shenanigans to complement the Separatists' calculate-based shenanigans. But it's not a terrible ability. You get a focus token, or you get a focus action. That means you need to be on stress to do it, so you want to be careful. Like, don't barrel roll evade if you want to use his ability. But if you're doing that, you're probably trying to get the fuck out of a firing arc, so whatever. Not much else to say about Tucker, I think. Like, at I-2, I don't know if he'll have a pilot talent. He might, but he might not. I actually need to double-check the spread, because they move stuff around with the upgrade list. I need to double-check. Do some low initiative pilots have those are pilot talents? Anyway. So, especially if he will presumably be pretty cheap, Tucker's not a bad pick to throw a pilot ability in amongst your generics if you have the points. So next we're going to talk about the pilot Axe body spray here, Blue 2, an I-3 pilot. Once again, not confusing at all. So Axe's ability reads, after you defend or perform an attack, you may choose a friendly ship at range 1 to 2, so not yourself, in your side arcs, your right side arc, your left side arc. These are all demarcated on your little cardboard, so you know. If you do, transfer 1 green token to that ship. So once again, green tokens is focus, evade, calculate, reinforce. So focus or evades in this case, because the Torrent can do both. I gotta be honest. Well, first of all, range 1 to 2 comes back. You also see side arcs for the first time, which is, I think we've seen that in some other previews. Well, was it the Arc 170 pilot they previewed? I think this is going to be another aspect of the Republic, is they're going to promote actual, like, wingtip to wingtip flying. So this is definitely very flavorful. My only issue is I think it's finicky. Axe is I-3, so it works after you defend or you perform an attack, which means you have to get about halfway through the slot and have to either be attacked or attacking. And then you pass a green token. So on the one hand, great insurance. You know, you take a focus, you take an evade. Maybe you barrel roll evaded. And it turns out, hey, you didn't need that token. Whether you were attacking or defending. You know, maybe you roll all natural 2s, or maybe your opponent whiffs and you don't need to roll anything. Right? They could blank out. And then you're like, well, I've got this token I don't need anymore. And you can pass it along to somebody who maybe will need it. The only thing is, it's just so finicky, because it's specifically the side arcs, and it's after Axe defends or attacks, which means that, like, if he's attacking, it's entirely possible that, like I said, if you're running a setup like I mentioned, where you're running a high initiative Jedi up front, and like you run to the focus. I mean, I guess if we're talking about classic matchups, if it's all I-1 droid pilots coming up, and you're like, they're gonna take some pot shots at my Jedi buddy who used all his force to, like, shoot earlier. Maybe I should pass him an evade or something. There are definitely strategies where it can work and certain matchups where it'll work. But as an insurance policy, it's very finicky, so I don't know if I like it a whole lot. Do like the thematic design, though. So next up, we have another I-3 who is Swoop, blue 6. Once again, not confusing at all. Swoop's ability is after a friendly small or medium ship. So this would include arcs. Fully executes a speed 3 to 4 maneuver. If it is at range 0 to 1, it may perform a red boost action. So obviously, range 0. This includes himself. He has a small base ship. Gotta be honest, that's gonna be telegraphed as hell, and I don't know if I'd want to do that. You only have a couple of moves that applies to, because most of your 3-speed moves are red. So, hey, guess what? You can't do actions when you're stressed. But it does give him a way to boost if he, like... Because, like we said, or like I said earlier, I should say, because we didn't say it, I said it, the V-19 doesn't like to turn, so if you do, like, a 3 straight or a 4 straight, and you're like, gosh, I'd really want to adjust my angle of attack here, you can totally do that for a boost. Sure, and you can take the red action, but, I don't know, like I said, it's very telegraphed. Let's see, what are the options available to... Yeah, so, note this doesn't say 5, so if you're a Jedi fighter, that cuts out a couple of your options, but... those have slightly more flexible 3-speed maneuvers, and they do still have a 4 straight. I expect what you're going to do is you're going to get that a lot with arcs. I have to double-check the arc dial to see what 3 and 4s they have that apply, but they've got a couple at least, and they, being medium bases, they probably don't mind boosting. So in general, I think this ability is for Swoop first, but because the Republic does encourage this formation flying, you can totally have it be like, have a buddy basically go for a little extra effort in their swing, right? And scooch a little bit farther. I don't know how like I said, how practical it is, especially on himself because of the way these dials are, but hey, another option in the toolkit. Some people will find a way to make swoop work because boosting is fun, but still, it's much like Axe. I think it's a little finicky, And so we are now on to the I-4 pilot Kickback, who is blue 4, thank God. He's got a very simple pilot ability. It reads, when you perform a barrel roll action, you may perform a red target lock action. So basically, to shorthand it, he has the ability to linked action, not only boost into evade, but boost into barrel roll. Not only barrel roll into evade, but barrel roll into target lock. So first of all, it's a 2-attack ship, so... You know, I-4 is starting to get up there decently in your initiative order. So you can, you have the ability to reposition and make sure you get your shots on certain pilots who may be going at lower initiatives or the same initiative as you. So that's okay. And then you can get a target lock to make sure that you can make your 2 dice count. That's always nice and fun and effective. The other thing is that obviously these things can be ordnance carriers, and that can be a way to get their attack rating up. So obviously, hey, barrel roll into an appropriate range and arc to fire a missile, and drop a target lock on them, and you got your target lock. I think Kickback is the start of like really getting decent synergy with force pilots because some of these guys are also going to be 4s or 5s, and so he's got that little pressure from possibly dropping a big ordnance attack on people. So you're going to make your enemy think about target priority. Again, hopefully these things aren't too expensive because the fighters themselves are kind of crappy. They're very minimalist and basic fighters. Like honestly, like I'm trying to think what they excel at, and the only thing really is, I mean, they got a little bit of flexibility in the dial. They can probably take ordnance, and then they're beefier than most other factions' cheapo ships. Is about it. But as a consequence, they have that lower agility. So it's questionable to me. It's questionable. They're like, I mean, TIE bombers were really good. I think they are still really good even after the recent points adjustment, but. I don't know if these things are quite as flexible as TIE bombers, because I don't think they're going to have as many upgrade options. But Kickback, at least, like I said, he's got a decent initiative to get up there that you can actually use his reposition actions, besides just to make sure you get a block or something. And he has good synergy with the things that the Torrent can do. So I like Kickback. His ability is simple, but that means that it's going to be effective a lot of times. And we are almost done with this 40-minute monster video. Oh my god, X-Wing, stop releasing such huge previews. At I-5, our highest pilot so far, and I assume the highest you're going to get in a Torrent, because, 6s are rare. They wanted that to be actually pretty rare. You got Oddball, CC-2237. And Oddball's ability is, after you fully execute a red maneuver or perform a red action, if there is an enemy ship in your bullseye, you may acquire a lock on that ship. So this is similar to Kickback, but obviously works in different ways. And honestly, he might be a little bit better than Kickback because, like we said, there's a lot of red on the dial of the Torrent. So, you've got your T-rolls, you've got your 1 turns, you've got your 3Ks, your 3 banks. You've got a lot of flexibility in those red maneuvers. And also, hey, fun fact, I'm pretty sure that means you can get, well, not 3 actions because you don't take a lock action. That's the beauty of it. It's acquire a lock, not take a target lock action. But you can get the effect of 3 actions if you barrel roll to line up on a target, get him in your bullseye. You can drop an evade to get an evade, and then you can be like, hey, I just did a red action, I have a target lock on you now. So now you're sitting on target lock evade, and you've got a bullseye shot on an enemy with a missile. Proton rockets are bullseyes. Not that you need a target lock for that. You need a focus, but still. You get what I'm getting at here. Like, this is a decent amount of flexibility for these guys, and he's an I-5, so if you're running him with somebody like an Obi-Wan, like a Plo-Koon, Mace Windu, he's right up there. He can definitely play wingman to those guys because he's playing in the same ballpark. And like I said, if you want to get your extra offense, missiles are a pretty decent way to go. So I think that Oddball is also a good example. Once again, hopefully he's not too expensive because the chassis is kind of trashy, to make that rhyme a little bit. And there's not much else to say about him. Much like Kickback, he's got a very simple ability, and then it's just, hey, do maneuver or do a red action. Is there an enemy in your bullseye? Lock him up. But just in general, getting action efficiency while also able to get your full range of actions or maneuvers is great. So I feel like you're gonna see a couple oddball missile lists in there, and that be how it be. All right, we're finally here. We're at the end. It only took like 45 minutes, but we're here. That's all the pilots and stuff and ships coming in the Guardians of the Republic Squadron pack. Overall, I think you can start to see what the Republic's ideals are going to be. I've said this before that I kind of figured they would be a faction that's somewhere between Rebels and Empire. And you can kind of feel that. So, like how the Empire operates a lot, I'm sure that the Jedi especially are going to be, and I mean the Rebels work like that too, because they've also got a lot of Force-using guys in there somewhere tucked away, and their named characters are like that. So, you've got a lot of these expensive aces with a lot of flexibility. Your I-5s, even when maybe your I-4s, depending on how your setup is. And definitely your I-6, Anakin Skywalker, is going to be in there. But also, a lot like the Empire, you've got these, cheap, almost disposable ships. Goodness knows how many torrents you can cram into a list, but like they're basically just cannon fodder to keep your real pilots alive or have that little bit extra punch. And while I'm sure you could run all torrent squads, you probably will work better doing, like I said, like a mix, like almost like running it like out of the box. One Jedi fighter and a couple of torrents is probably an okay squadron. And we'll see how that all shakes out as we get closer to release. We'll see kind of maybe some unique upgrades. Maybe, I don't know if I'll do that video. It'll have to interest me. Otherwise, just keep it in mind. But yeah, so you see a lot of that focus. I said you also see some unique aspects of the Republic in that they reward formation flying, range 0 to 2 or 1 to 2. But also they kind of reward wingtip flying, like traditional, your wingmate is slightly off to your side and maybe behind you a little bit type flying, as opposed to like a whirlwind or a windmill or a ball of TIE fighters or something. Like these guys like a nice evenly spaced line. Very interesting. Super interested in them. I actually really like the Republic a lot. I probably won't get a chance to play with any of these things because now there's so many factions and boxes and stuff in X-Wing. And I've never gotten all the way to like fire up and get into second edition fully. But, it looks super fun. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the episode before we go on too much longer. I know, if you've stuck with me all the way through this, thank you for your patience. I always say thank you for your time, but especially I mean it, because I don't really, as much as I talk a lot, and sometimes I let the talking get away from me when I do bits that are more unscripted. As much as I love that, I also don't like to waste your time. I want to keep it on point and on focus, and I think I covered all the discussion points that I want to. So I'm glad you stuck through out of it. It's just, these squadron packs are big dumps. They're 2 whole ships worth of a lot of pilots, right? But they're there, and Clone Wars factions look exciting and unique, and I hope that they continue to carry this off to their other Star Wars games. Hey, did you know Armada actually got an update? Ooh, freaky. Anyway, I have held your time long enough, so I will go ahead and say that if you liked this video, you should leave a like. If you have any comments on the Republic ships, the Republic factions, thoughts about Clone Wars stuff in general, go ahead and leave those in the comment section down below. And also, if you're new here and have not already, please subscribe to the channel so you can always get our latest videos when we're getting around to post them. And don't forget that bell for notifications so you always know when we post a new video, because, hey, it could be a week. Not really, well, you know what I mean. After a news article that a video about it comes out. Womp womp. And of course, like it says at the front of the show, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to episodes early, and it really helps us out and supports us, and is good for the channel, and for the people running the channel, who need to not only buy miniatures, but buy, food and clothes and stuff, and make sure our computers work so we can make videos. That's about everything, so I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go, and, my usual outro here is happy flying, everybody, which I always mean. I do genuinely mean happy flying, but also, for once, I can say, may the Force be with you, because, man, look at all them Force points.